This meeting is being recorded.
All right, you're now live.
Cool, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the holiday season and our little December break from this committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 4:06 p.m. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We'll start today's meeting with a roll call and a V check. When I call your name, I ask that each member ensure their video and microphone are working. You can just say hello. So first up, Councillor Trish Purdy.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hi, thank you. Councillor Laura White.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Afternoon, all.
Hello. Kathy Stevenson.
Hi.
Hello. Glenn Babcock sent regrets. Anne Sinclair.
Hello.
Hello. Jamil Sino.
Hello.
Hello. Oliver Keith.
Hi.
Hello. You look like you're in paradise right now, although I imagine that's a fake background.
Real.
You are on the beach. I love it. Celine Ventura.
Hello.
Hello. Nicholas Harris.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. And me, Rochelle Manette. I am here. So first thing we're doing is the now, I guess, biannual for right now, election of chair and vice chair and the AAC representative for ATAC. Elizabeth, I'm going to pass this over to you. Do you want to, and I can't remember if this is in an email, do you want to let people know why we're doing elections again, even though it's only been 6 months?
Yes. So I think I had let everyone know in the agenda package. This is more to be consistent with all the other advisory committees. So best practice is generally to have an election at the first meeting of the year, the annual election of chair, vice chair, and for this committee for ATAC. So this committee had always traditionally done an election of chair in, I would say, like May, June. I don't know why that was. That was just kind of the traditional practice for this committee. But I had spoken with other, like my supervisor in the clerk's office, and kind of the agreement was that it's best to kind of get this committee in line with best practice and the typical, I guess, when elections are held with other advisory committees, which is always the first meeting of the year. So that is why we're having the election again for any of you that are wondering, and kind of going forward, we will continue hopefully to have them in January.
Cool. Thanks, Elizabeth.
But on that note, thank you for handing the floor off to me, Rochelle. So we're on to item 1.1, which is the annual election of chair. And before I open the floor for nominations for the position of chair, I just want to remind members that you can either self-nominate or nominate another member of the committee. And if you do nominate someone else, I just have to make sure that they accept the nomination. So on that note, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'll open the floor. Councillor Saint-Amand.
I'd like to nominate Rochelle to just keep going.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Second.
Councillor White. And Rochelle, do you accept that nomination?
I do accept the nomination. Thank you both.
All right. I'll call 3 times for nominations. I will call a second time for any nominations for the position of chair. All right, hearing none, I will call a third and final time for the position of chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. All right, hearing none, nominations will cease. So our successful nominee is Rochelle, and I will now need a motion to appoint Rochelle Manette, the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that.
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. I will now call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
I don't know if
Any
I'm supposed to vote.
opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion has passed, and Rochelle is the successful candidate and will assume the chair. So Rochelle, it is up to you. You can, if you would like to run the election of vice chair and the election as representative to ATAC, or I could do it if you would like as well. It's up to you.
I mean, you're doing such a great job already. You can
Thank
just
you.
continue if you want.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to item 1.2, annual election of vice chair. Same rules as the previous one. I will open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair.
This is Rochelle. I would like to nominate Nick Harris if he's willing.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
That was that Councillor Purdy? Councillor
Trish, yeah.
Ward? Oh, perfect. All right, Nick, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Perfect. Okay. So we have one nominee or one candidate. I will call a second time for any further nominations for the position of vice chair. All right, hearing none, I will call a third time for any nominations for the position of vice chair. Okay, hearing none, nominations will cease. Nick is our successful candidate, so we will need a motion now to appoint Nick the vice chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that.
So moved.
I'll
Thank
second.
you.
There's Rochelle. Or Councillor
Oh,
Purdy.
okay.
Either way.
Perfect.
Everyone had their hands up.
All right, we will call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, that motion carries. And Nick, you have been reelected as vice chair. Congratulations. We will move on to 1.3. This is the election of Active Transportation Advisory Committee representative. So Glenn is the current rep to ATAC. He isn't here today. I did try to communicate with him before if he kind of sent his regrets just like shortly before the meeting. So I don't know if he would accept a nomination. I guess I will, on that note, I will open the floor for any nominations for the position of ATAC rep.
When would Glenn's term ordinarily have concluded?
Normally it would conclude just when the next election happens. So traditionally, as I mentioned before, this committee normally has annual elections in June. So I guess in June. He was elected to this position in June, and he was
Right.
also the ATAC rep for a year prior to that. He was
Okay.
first elected. Oh, sorry, I'm actually in real time getting an email here from Glenn. Yeah, he said he'd be willing to accept a nomination, but he wasn't sure when his actual term is ending. I think his term is set to end in November. Anyway, I will call for nominations. Celine, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so it's not for nomination. I just wanted to know, how does the commitment for this position looks like?
So for this position, it's pretty similar to just being a member on this committee. They meet once monthly. I believe it's the third Thursday of every month at 4:30. Their meetings run 4:30 to 6:30. So it's quite similar to just being a member of this committee.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with nominating Glenn. I'm interested in this position, but I have to slow down. I have an itinerary this year, but no, it's good to know. I'd be okay. And the other question I have too, like, because I'm only a member till like April. So for me, if I would have been nominated and accepted, I would have only had a microscopic amount of time on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
role.
up to you, or it's up to like you or any other member if you want to. I wouldn't let necessarily your term or your current membership affect if you nominate yourself or someone else. So if someone were elected in January and your term ended in, let's say, like April, or you're replaced maybe in May or something, then we would just have another election for a representative to ATAC. Same with chair, vice chair. If the person's term ended and they were no longer on the committee, we would just have another election for that position at the next meeting.
Yeah. No, anyway, thanks for sharing. I had like so interested in continuing even with this committee, but I in the future would like to come back, but I have to stay with everything else that I have scheduled. So cool, thanks. But yeah, I'll nominate Glenn.
Glenn?
If
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
And do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second. For Glenn.
Perfect. Thank you, Rochelle. And yeah, Glenn had indicated that he was interested in staying on with ATAC as long as he's on the committee. So we'll assume that we'll say that he accepted that nomination. But I will call a second time for any further nominations for the position. Okay, hearing none, I will call a third and final time for any nominations for the position of ATAC, of representative to ATAC. All right, hearing none. Glenn is our successful nominee, so we will move for a motion to appoint. If I
So
could have a
moved.
mover. Perfect.
I can second.
Nick, great. So once again, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, that motion carries and Glenn has been reelected as representative to ATAC. And on that note, I will pass the floor back to our chair.
Thank you.
Take it away from here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, moving on to number 2, approval of minutes. I will now ask if there are any errors or omissions for the minutes of November 17th, 2025 meeting. If there are none, I would invite a member to move the following motion: that the minutes of November 17th, 2025 of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting be approved as presented.
So moved.
Thanks.
Second.
Great, thank you. All right, I will call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. All those opposed say nay or raise your hand. Seeing none, motion carried. Moving on, we'll move to the approval of the order of business for today's meeting. To our legislative assistant, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There are no changes to today's agenda.
Great, thank you. Anne, you have a question? I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just noticed that I think it was Christmas Eve. There was a letter sent to us by Elizabeth, some correspondence from a citizen, and I don't know if that's supposed to be on our agenda or not.
I was wondering the same thing. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. I think, and Elizabeth, you could probably speak to this more, but when we did the agenda review, we had sort of like set up this agenda, but I think for that correspondence to be part of the next agenda, it makes the most sense because there's a lot on the agenda today. But also, I mean, if other folks are like, we need to prioritize that, I'm sure that we can figure it out. But I do agree that it's an important piece of communication that we should be looking at. But yeah, Elizabeth, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'll just speak to that briefly. So that was general correspondence that was received and circulated to members of the committee. So with general correspondence, the topic that the correspondence is of can absolutely be added to the agenda as an item of discussion. In this instance, I didn't receive any requests to add it as an item of discussion to this agenda, but as Rochelle also mentioned, this agenda also was quite full with a couple of presentations and items of discussion. But that topic can definitely be added to the next meeting or a future meeting at the request of a member as a topic of discussion.
Cool. Thanks, Elizabeth. Good questions. All right. So if there are no more questions or anything about today's agenda, I will invite a member of the committee to move the following motion: that the agenda be approved as presented. I see Jean Saint-Amand, your hand is up. Is that a question or are you moving?
Well, I can do both.
Okay.
Not a question, but I mean, there's not really a spot in the agenda for me to let everybody know this, but I did want to share with the committee that I did an interview with the Reachability Association's, what is it called? They have a podcast that just went into its second season called Within Our Reach. And the topic of conversation was what the Accessibility Advisory Committee does and its role in HRM. So they asked me a laundry list of questions, and I shared my thoughts with what the role of the committee is and how successful we are and what are the areas that we're looking to get better in, that sort of thing. And so they haven't published the episode yet. It's due to come out either at the end of January or sometime in early February. So I will share that with the committee members when that link becomes available.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to move. Well, were we
Thanks.
moving? I don't remember now.
We're moving for the agenda to be approved as
yes.
presented.
Yes,
Cool.
I'll move that the agenda proceed as articulated.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All right. Call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise hands.
Aye.
Great. All right. And all those opposed say nay or raise hands. Seeing none. All right. The motion has been carried. There is no business arising out of the minutes yet, maybe for next time. I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. I'm seeing none. We will move on. All right, consideration of deferred business, none. We're moving on to correspondence, petitions, and delegations. To our clerk, has any correspondence been received, or presentations or petitions?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office, and the clerk's office has not received any petitions.
Cool. And there are no external presentations on today's agenda. I didn't have to ask that question. It was just a statement. All right. So number 8, information items brought forward. There are none. So we are moving on to number 9, reports and discussion, starting with item 9.1.1, the Almond Street Active Transportation Extension. I'll invite Garrett Jonaher, transportation engineer of Viaris Engineering, Inc., and Catherine McClellan of the Active Transportation Planner to deliver a presentation. And then once that presentation is done, I'll go through the speakers list and we can ask our questions and make our comments then. So go ahead, Garrett and Catherine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I just wanted to introduce myself before Garrett gets started on the presentation today. I am an active transportation with the HRM, and Garrett is our engineering consultant who we've hired to work on this project for us. So he's going to provide the presentation, and then we'll be able to respond to some questions afterwards.
Thank you, Catherine. I have attempted to share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
I can't see a present. Oh, there we go.
No? All right. Perfect.
It's coming up now. Great. Now I can see it. So there's that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for the introductions. So I'm going to run through this as quickly as we can to leave lots of time for questions. This project is looking at an extension of the existing or recently constructed bike lanes along Almond. So I'm going to quickly run through kind of where we are and where we're going. And then I'm going to go through how we'll evaluate our options that we're looking at, what those options are, and some of the things we also looked at that have kind of screened out and said we're not taking these any further. And so that's the material that will be presented at upcoming public consultation events as well. There's a survey that's going live next week online, and then some in-person sessions in the second week of February. So where are we talking about here? This is an aerial map of the peninsula, basically showing kind of where Almond sits for our project area. This is at the eastern end of Almond between Agricola and Gottingen Street. And I also have a little inset image showing kind of a picture of what it looks like today, which has the green backed sharrows, so the bicycle symbol with the arrow on a green backing, so it's nice and bright on the asphalt, as well as some tactical curbs that have been placed on the road. So they're not permanent curbs, they're just kind of placed there temporarily. So these are forming a local street bikeway today in kind of a tactical way as a interim measure. And where are we going next? So we have completed the stage of the project where we kind of gather all the background information. Right now we're doing the concept design where we kind of come up with some ideas, pick a couple of good ones that we think are worth exploring further, and then bring that to the public and all of our stakeholders like you folks, and try to figure out what's the best option. That is the next step, where we do that selection of what the best option is based on all the feedback we hear back and technical criteria as well. And then once we're through that, then we'll do a functional design. So that'll be the end of this little project. So how do we choose which option we take? We have a framework that has a 7-point list on it. And so we look at pedestrian movement and safety, and bicycle movement as safety as our top 2 criteria. We look at how comfortable and how safe it feels to be in the environment. So CPTED is a term you may have heard about how it feels to be in an area. So that's our next criteria. We look at the impact of cars and impact of parking and how vehicles can move through the area. We look at whether the facilities we're providing encourage access to green spaces and, separation from poor air quality areas, like things like that. So that's a health and environment criteria. Public sentiment is a big criteria for us on this project to make sure that we are reflecting back what we hear from the community. And then we have an implementation criteria at the bottom here as well. And that looks at like how complex, how expensive it would be to build each option, how easy it is to actually get it done once we recommend it. One notable thing that's not on this list that we usually do have for this type of project is transit. But our options don't overlap with any transit facilities or routes or anything like that. So we reallocated those points to other areas. And I'm going to skip this next slide. It has a little bit more detail that we can jump back to if we have any questions, and then dive into the concept options. So the first option that we have has a split facility depending on whether you're traveling westbound or eastbound. So on this slide, I have a kind of an aerial map that's zoomed in on the project area. And I'm showing we have an existing north-south bikeway on Isleville that connects to or gets close to an existing east-west bikeway on Almond. And then right now, as I mentioned before, Almond has that kind of local street bikeway for that last 2 eastern blocks between Agricola and Gottingen. And then I'm also showing on here Northwood Terrace and Fuller Terrace. They're a one-way pair of streets. And right now they're also set up with that kind of tactical local street bikeway treatment. And these run all the way down to Cogswell, so right to the bottom of the north end. And so in option 1, if you're traveling westbound on this new proposed facility, you'll have access to a protected bikeway on Almond is the option here. And if you're traveling eastbound, then there would be a local street bikeway connection on Bloomfield. And then in order to reach Bloomfield, there is a link here on Agricola. So you'd come off of Almond, travel a block south on Agricola in a protected bike lane, and then cross over onto Bloomfield, which is a more quiet residential street. So that is option 1. The next picture I have here is what the kind of the cross section, what it would look like if you were standing on the street for Almond. So we have that protected bikeway along the northern side of the street. So that's facing westbound is coming towards us out of this image. And then 2 lanes of traffic, sidewalks on both sides. So in this option, we're not actually moving the curbs at all. So all the trees and utilities and sidewalks and everything beyond the curb stays where it is today. And then we can implement this without a huge infrastructure cost because we're just implementing it with those tactical materials. In this option, there is existing parking on one side of the street right now, so we do lose a little bit of existing parking. And then on Agricola, this is that little link that connects us from Almond down to Bloomfield. So we have that protected bikeway along the western side of Agricola to head southbound, and then the southbound lane. And then I have shown on here a couple of northbound lanes as well. If you can see really closely, the dimensions on those lanes are quite narrow. Those are the existing lane dimensions that are there today. It's quite narrow to travel northbound on Agricola at this point. And then that would link up with the local street bikeway on Bloomfield. Our second option, so I'm returning to my aerial map. And on my second option, those east-west movements are all carried on Bloomfield. So it's a local street bikeway in both directions. We're not adding new facilities to Almond at all. And then in order to reach those east-west movements on Bloomfield, we have a bi-directional bike lane on Agricola. And so in that cross-section view again, we're showing that north-south link on Agricola and that block between Almond and Bloomfield as a bi-directional bike lane on the west side, and then 2 lanes of traffic. So existing today, there's 3 lanes of traffic. There's one southbound, one northbound, and also a northbound left turn lane. And so in order to fit this option, we need to eliminate one of those turn lanes. So the left northbound lane is eliminated. And we did a little traffic assessment to say, okay, out of the people that are currently using that left turn, where might they go in the surrounding neighborhood, and how would that impact vehicle operations for the area? And we found that because there's not too many people making that left turn, from a very technical perspective, there's not a huge impact for removing that left turn. So that's positive. That doesn't mean that there's no impact to those people's lives though, right? So if somebody has to figure out a new way to get around and a new route to use, that's still an impact on them, but that's a bit more of a subjective impact. So I'm going to go through 4 alternatives that we looked at, but then eventually screened out and said, we don't think any of these options are as promising as the 2 that I just presented. And so they're not taken any further as part of this project. So these are mostly included so that as we communicate with our stakeholders, such as you guys, and with the public, that we can be transparent about like what we've looked at and what we're considering, to try to give a little peek behind the curtain of one of these projects. So the first one, alternative A here, has bike lanes on Almond, both directions, all the way from Agricola to Gottingen. So this is a continuous extension of the existing bike lanes that exist on Almond now. So it's really nice and continuous from what we have out there today. In order to fit these bike lanes, we would need to widen on one side of the street. I mentioned in option 1 that we're able to kind of keep things within the curbs. But to do this, we would have to widen on one side of the street. And then we'd end up with a bunch of kind of minimally acceptable facilities and a lot of infrastructure impact to relocate utilities and move some trees around. So due to those impacts and the relatively small benefit compared to having the eastbound movement on Bloomfield, this alternative was screened out. A second option, which had the same bike lanes on Almond, east-west, all the way from Agricola over to Gottingen, but then trying to avoid those minimal sizes on everything, we would need to widen out on both sides. And when we do that, we get into kind of a major utility corridor on the north side of Almond, as well as some trees that have been planted in soil cells. So a lot more infrastructure impacts with that option. And we felt that that was really kind of going a bit too far in terms of the impacts that we would have in order to accommodate this. So even alternative A was probably ranked a little bit higher when we did that initial screening here. And then a third option that we had to try to get these, bike lanes in both directions, because we really wanted to provide that continuity of the bike lanes that exist on Almond, A third option was to find that extra space by removing one of the vehicle lanes that exist today. So that would mean we were looking at a one-way facility on Almond for vehicles, and cutting out the other direction of traffic. So this would have had kind of bigger impacts on how traffic moved around in the area. And that was deemed to not really be feasible to make that big of a change on this link right next to CFD Stadtkrona, which is immediately to the east of us on Gottingen. So that one was ruled out. And then the last one that we looked at but then ruled out was to try to stay off Almond altogether, and provide local street bikeway connections on both Bilby, which is parallel to Almond but one's block north, and on Bloomfield, so parallel to Almond but one block south, and then connect those to the existing facilities on Almond using a two-way bike lane link on Agricola. And in order for that to kind of make sense, connecting to Bilby and Bloomfield, it would need to be on the east side of Agricola, which is the opposite side that we looked at from option 2. And so this one was pretty close to being included, but it's really complicated to design that intersection and how the different movements conflict with each other, where are the crosswalks, where are the bikes traveling through, how do the turns cross those paths. And so there's not a lot of space at the intersection of Almond and Agricola. And in order to accommodate that two-way bike facility, we felt like it's not going to provide us with the quality of facility that we would need to call this a AAA facility. And so we set that one aside. And that is the end of those options. The last thing I wanted to show you guys before I open it up to questions was just a draft evaluation, kind of how it works in a tabular form. So we take each of those 7 criteria that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and we just looked at a rank of concept 1 versus concept 2. Which one's better? Are they both doing pretty well, so they'll score high? Or is it doing pretty poorly, so it'll score low or lower? So trying to look at the relative merits of each option and run through. These are really in draft format. That's not something that's going to be part of the public engagement process when we go out with our boards in person and present this to folks and chat through it with them. But I wanted to provide it to anybody here or watching to be able to see kind of where heads at to start. On this second page of the evaluation table, you can see that public sentiment box is empty right now because we haven't done the public process yet. And right now, the 2 options, like we haven't totaled up the scores or anything like that because we are missing those criteria and we're missing all the feedback that everybody would provide to us. So they're very much draft at this point, and then we'll see where we go from there. And that is everything for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Garrett. I'm going to move through the speakers list just in order, and then we can always come back if there's more questions at the end. So I'm going to start with Oliver Keith.
Great. Awesome presentation. I love the slides. They're very well done. My first question is, if you can go back to the slide, what number is it? The draft evaluation slide. I know you said this wasn't with your public engagement, but I see on pedestrian movement and safety, box 3, accessibility, both are rated 8 out of 10, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like what went into that scoring? Why is it an 8? I'm just kind of looking a bit more nuance as to like where that score came from for both concepts.
Yeah, so because we're so early in the design stage, this is mostly based on trying to think about what Barriers we're going to run into when we get further down the path toward design. So concept 1 uses pretty much all kind of existing sidewalks, existing crosswalks. And so as part of the project, we might be able to upgrade a few crosswalks, do some tactile treatments, but there's not a huge change from kind of the overall existing environment. So it benefits from being familiar, and it benefits from having that ability to make some modest improvements. But it doesn't score super high because it's not going all out and implementing every little thing that we possibly could. Concept number 2, we're actually changing the corner of Agricola and Almond closest to the Bloomfield development site in order to accommodate that new two-way bikeway. And so there's a really good improvement that we're able to make there, make some protected intersection style changes, which separates out our bike and our pedestrian users. So that was a really great benefit from option 2. So we increased the score for that, but also it's a little bit more complex of an environment and not quite as familiar to everyday users. So we knocked it back down a peg for that.
Gotcha. Okay. So the criteria is kind of the 2 listed there, just like based on present conditions and how the development will either positively or negatively impact it.
Yeah, and that general framing that you just said kind of applies throughout all the different criteria for the evaluation table.
Got you. Okay. My next question then is concept 1. I think, where is it? You mentioned a tactile barrier, I think. Yeah, could you just go over that for me very quickly one more time? Just I heard it and I was kind of wrote it down, but didn't get the full idea.
Yeah. So this would be, or it's proposed currently as a tactical barrier, which means that rather than going out and pouring new permanent concrete in the roadway, that we pin down precast concrete curbs, provide those flexible bollards on the top of them to provide some delineation. So it's a much more cost-effective way of getting the infrastructure in place. And then, at a later date, if Almond was to, be recapitalized, then it could be implemented with more permanent materials. But it's a method of kind of providing that protected space while still being cost effective.
I see. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, that's all my questions for today. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Garrett.
Thanks, Oliver. Next up on the list is Celine Vautour.
Hi. Yeah, and just to let you know, my internet connection just gave out just a minute ago. So if this happens again, I think it's the snow day kind of causing it. Yeah, so one thing first, yeah, I'm super happy to see all these bike lanes, especially in that area of the North End. I know so many people that love cycling that live in that area. So it's definitely going to be of benefit to that community. The only thing, I just wish I would have had pictures, like actual pictures of the street, because I know I'm very familiar with the intersection of like a Agricola and Almond can get a little complicated, and it can even be a tight turn, especially if somebody is driving a truck. So has there been any kind of sorry, I'm also blanking right now. Has that been put into consideration of how that intersection is already built?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna pull across here a quick.
Oh, thank you,
preview image for you. So
and a truck.
This is the existing intersection. So it is pretty tight there today. These lanes that are coming toward us in the image, these are the northbound lanes. They're very narrow compared to what we would normally design a traffic lane. The southbound you can see is pretty wide. It's almost as wide as both of those northbound lanes together. So as we look at changes to this intersection, where people can fit, especially those larger vehicles, but also the path of a vehicle as it turns through the intersection is something that we're keeping in our mind, so that we're not sending somebody into opposing traffic as they make their turn to be able to get through here. So that's definitely a piece of the design consideration. It's more at a conceptual level right now because we're so early, but it's definitely there.
Thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm just looking really closely here. Sorry, just looking at my notes. Yeah, I think I had just more or less like a focus on that intersection, only because I remember it's always a pain to kind of try to stay alive crossing in that area. Same thing with like Roby and Almond. Like I find the same thing. Oh, okay, now great, I remembered. So you mentioned about raised bike lanes, like so that you guys decided not to implement that. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, so for the concepts that we've presented, we've decided to use the tactical treatments rather than building the permanent like raised infrastructure, just from trying to be as cost conscious as possible. It doesn't preclude building them with a raised treatment at a later date when the road needs to be worked on anyway. But yeah, we've suggested it with tactical materials for the most part today.
So the other thing too, because I understand like what the work that has been done on the more upper level of Almond, like connecting towards Windsor, like between Windsor and Roby. There's a lot of positives that I see of these changes. The only thing that I'm always kind of wondering about, it just feels like there's a lot of like, because isn't there a barrier to like a more raised barrier between, so there's not going to be any of that in this new section of Almond that you guys are working on?
Yeah, so I brought back the image, the street view image here for you.
Right, and I appreciate this. Thank you.
This side here, the right-hand side of the road, that is a tactically implemented bike lane. Right now, it doesn't have those concrete barriers, so you can kind of see along that white line. There's going to be installed, and that's what's there today. This image is just from a couple of years ago, and so there's a line of concrete barriers that kind of runs along here. So there's gaps at driveways and whatnot to let cars come out, but most of the time, as you're traveling on a bike along this area, you're kind of separated from traffic by that curb.
Right, but the curb, like, has there been discussion like for visually impaired individuals, like trying to, like, will there be like markers that if you're visually impaired, you will notice that there is in fact kind of a barrier that's lifted higher up that you don't trip on it? That's what I mean. I'm sorry if I'm like explaining this poorly, but hopefully
that's quite all right. That's something that is not part of the design for those barriers. That said, we don't use barriers across any area where we would expect a pedestrian to travel. So we're not using them on top of a crosswalk of any kind. So the barriers are only in place kind of in the middle of the block where you really shouldn't be walking out into the street anyway.
Okay. Although a lot of people do, that's the thing, but I'm sure, but again, that was just like kind of like one little concern too, like, if there was at least like some kind of visual, but again, if we know so well, the civilians of the HRM, like to defy the rules a little when it comes to crossing. But anyway, but thank you for explaining that. I have nothing else, but thank you.
Thanks, Celine. Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. And thanks for this presentation. I really appreciate it. It's very, it seems to have encompassed a lot of the discussions we've been having at council this past year, and even the sentiments of the province kind of getting involved in our active transportation issues in the peninsula. So I appreciate the consideration for leaving current infrastructure as is, the cost considerations. I do have to say that with traffic assessments on, developments and these types of changes in the street, it never seems to be a problem until it happens. So we never seem to foresee the problem. So I do appreciate in your presentation, you kind of indicated that yes, this would still have an impact, but it didn't seem to have in the assessment done, didn't seem to have a significant impact, but it still will. So I guess that's all my comments on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. Next up is Councillor Laura White.
Hi. Thank you. I got lots of questions. First one would be, how do you envision a left from Agricola onto Bloomfield happening safely and with priority for cycling?
Yeah, so I am going to bring up one of the plan view drawings that we've made that goes with the concept. So we're going to like print these out for our public meetings, and they'll be available on the project website as well. And I'm just going to zoom in. This happens to be option 2, where we have a bi-directional bike lane coming down the side of Almond. But the concept here is that we would provide a curb extension. So we are making a permanent infrastructure change right at the intersection at Bloomfield in order to provide that safe space where somebody can come down from Almond and wait and cross when they find an appropriate gap. We're also thinking about options of maybe including a rapid flashing beacon that somebody could press to kind of help them communicate to drivers that I'd like to cross and provide that safe space. So this design, again, like it's 10%. We're in early stages of the concept, and we need to work with the Bloomfield development site to make sure the driveway is accommodating and everything. But that's the idea that we have so far.
Okay, like waiting is not gonna be very good because there's a ton of traffic there. The RRFB is curious to me because I didn't think that's allowed for bikes.
So under the Motor Vehicle Act, a bike doesn't have the priority over vehicles. Even if they do push the button, they would have to walk across in order to take priority as a pedestrian.
Okay.
So it is a bit of an area.
So this is a design
development and
to be
advocacy
for bikes that
yeah.
is asking cyclists to get off and walk. Okay.
Yeah. So we're
Okay.
trying to tread the fine line between providing infrastructure to guide people to do the right thing and also understand how people are actually going to behave in the street.
Okay. Here's a thought that's come to me because the last time I used this facility, I actually wanted to go up Agricola, and I made the left from Almond onto Agricola during the pedestrian and bike interval. You probably don't want me doing that, but that's what I did. I'm wondering if you consider that, like instead of using Bloomfield, using Bilby, because if you're coming across Almond, I guess I'm trying to get to Isleville and go north. Like, why not have the one way on Agricola and take advantage of that signal light? So like kind of a scramble for bikes, make your left, have a one-way protected there on Agricola to get to Bilby. Have you looked at that? Or
yeah, so you mean if you're heading kind of east on Almond and turning left, or coming west on Almond?
I guess the way I use this path is like go on Almond and then make a left to go north on Isleville. So I'm just thinking, what about that? Instead of, because why would I go out of my way? Why would I go over to Bloomfield and then back when you could just make a left on Agricola to hook up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring back the map here. Just give me a second to drag it over. So looking at the map here, if I'm traveling east on Almond and I want to get north on Isleville, both of these options do include a bit of a detour if you want to stay on the facility as designed, because you're going to go down Agricola across Bloomfield, and then if you're heading northbound, you're going to go back up Isleville. So you kind of got that little dog leg that you got to make, right? So one of the aspects of this that we're hoping to implement is to kind of maintain the treatment that's on Almond today with the Sharrows and the tactical treatments to provide a facility for those who are confident enough to stay on the road sharing with vehicles.
That one. Okay.
So we'll have kind of the AAA facility for those that are less confident, and then keep those existing facilities that are for folks that are more confident and folks that are connecting all the way down to Gottingen, because both of our options only extend to that north-south corridor. They don't go all the way over to Gottingen.
Right. But even so, I guess what I'm thinking of, you could still have it protected. You could have a one-way protected lane on Agricola going north.
Going north at this point? Yep, that's not something...
Yeah, like Almond to Bilby. Just instead of going the wrong way. I don't know if there's... I just don't know what demand there is to go with that detour but if you use Bilby, it's the direction you're traveling anyway.
Yeah, kind of mirroring the treatment that we have on Agricola, this one on the other side, to head north as well. That's something that we hadn't included as one of the various combinations of things. So we'll take a look at it.
Cool. Okay. I'll leave it at that for now, but okay, maybe just one more. Are there any plans ever to have cycling on Agricola? I just think it's begging for better pedestrian and cycling facilities, especially if Roby's going to be BRT with no cycling.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's been ruled out as part of the AAA network and all the considerations that went in with that. But I see Mark Nieder on the call here. If he has any words to add, then I'd be happy to hear.
You're muted if you're talking, Mark.
Sorry, I pulled you in there without notice.
No, I'm good now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Nieder, Supervisor of Active Transportation Planning with HRM. So to answer your question, Councillor, I guess as part of the work that we're doing, like the overall review of the AT network in response to the motion last year, Deputy, well, at the time, Deputy Mayor Mancini, we will take another look, or have taken another look at Agricola as an alternative route, an alternative north-south route, and we'll be reporting back on that. We've got our first part of that report coming back to council next week, actually.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember if we considered this particular north-south segment as part of part one of the report, or if that's still to come.
Well, that's okay. You're thinking about it, and that's great that there may be room for conversation on that. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Was that it, Laura? I didn't want to cut you off.
That's good.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Thank you, Rochelle. Gary, you did an excellent job outlining what the options are. I don't have the downtown experience that my fellow councillor Laura has to be able to get into the granular detail on what some potential options are. I'll just further Councillor Purdy's comment that it's excellent that you're thinking about the budgetary implications in selecting tactical over permanent installs and looking to defer a decision on permanent installs to sometime in the future when there's something else going on in the area. I think one of the things that we're very mindful of as we go into our budget process is consideration like that being brought by our team to try to rein in some of the costs with everything that we're doing. So I just wanted to voice my support for that particular approach and the sensitivity with which you've applied that lens to this project.
Thanks very much.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Next up is Kathy Stevenson.
I have no questions at all. Sorry.
Thanks, Kathy. That's okay. Next up, Glenn didn't join the meeting. Am I correct, Elizabeth? I don't think I saw him come in, but just want to check.
No, he hasn't joined the meeting. Sorry.
Great. That's okay. All right. Next on the list is Anne Sinclair.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thanks for this presentation. I might be behind in comprehension behind other people, but I have a question of clarification. If we look at either one of the concept 1 or 2, the aerial view that gives the proposed local, yeah, we can pick that one. So just if you could clarify the terminology. So if we look at Northwood and Fuller, under existing infrastructure, it says suggested bikeways to be designed. So, and then under concept option, the yellow is proposed protected bikeway. So is there an existing bikeway on Fuller? And I'm thinking about continuity of travel. So is there already the Northwood and Fuller bikeways?
Yeah.
Or
So today, Northwood and Fuller are both designed as a kind of a quick build local street bikeway. So there's some traffic calming, there are temporary curbs in place at intersections, and then there's those Sharrow markings along the road. And both Maynard and Crichton as well on the other side of North Street, all the way down to Cogswell. So those two kind of one-way links are in place today, but not as permanent infrastructure. So there's actually a separate project that HRM is working on right now called the North End Complete Streets Phase 2. And that project is looking at that north-south link a little bit more carefully and trying to come up with recommendations for the long term on that. So it's in place kind of as a temporary solution today, and then will be perhaps something different or perhaps the same in the future based on that other project.
okay, thanks. And so the similar one that's going east-west from Gottingen to Agricola, that's similar to in option 2?
Yeah, so in option 2, we're suggesting that remains in place, as I mentioned earlier, for Councillor White, to try to kind of maintain that continuity for folks that are confident enough to use that mixed traffic environment. Almon's a little bit busier than the local neighborhood streets. And then in option 1, I'll back up a couple slides here, a portion of that would remain, but some of it would be replaced with a protected bike lane.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Next on the list is Jamil Sino.
Hi, Garrett. Thank you so much for answering our questions. I maybe just have a clarification question in terms of the process of construction and its impact on accessibility. How is that currently being studied, if at all? Is that part of your team's job, or when you hand this off to, per se, the construction company, it's their responsibility to like assess that?
Yeah, so this particular project only goes to what we call a functional design. That's about 30% of the way from kind of having a blank sheet of paper to having designs that are ready for the contractor. And so this project won't be looking at that beyond kind of what those final designs look like. So that construction period is something that is usually managed through the tendering and award process and what those temporary conditions are during construction. So not part of this project, but is something that HRM looks at through that lens.
Okay, I see. So it's, if I was to ask if there were any like it's the studies of, or the impact studied, sorry, the accessibility impacts, are they studied as part of your project? Sorry, it took me a second to put together that question.
That's quite all right. So the accessibility lens that we place is what that final design would look like in terms of the infrastructure and features of the design that are available on the ground. So
Okay.
that's the lens that we take for our project.
So if I was to try and follow through on the accessibility throughout the process, not just ensuring accessibility to at the end of the project, how could I do that?
I don't know the exact right person to reach.
Yeah.
I do know that through the design group within HRM under the Public Works, they manage most of those contracts that go through construction. So
Okay.
I would guess there would be a supervisor or manager over there that would be most appropriate to reach out to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Next on the list is Nick Harris.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation as well. Point of clarification, and we might have gone over this in previous past, but still new process to me, but the evaluation framework, is this just like a standard weighting? Because accessibility, I think, was weighted at like 5% of the overall, assumingly 100% of the score. Is that like industry standard? Is that Halifax standard? Is that company standard? Where did that percentage come from? I'm just curious, not knowing the actual answer, if there's some insight there.
Yeah, there is no particular standard on how to do this kind of multi-criteria evaluation. At the end of the day, we're trying to balance out all the different priorities. And the reason that I like to present this when it's still in a draft form is to give people the opportunity to say, I think the weight on that needs to be a little bit higher, or we don't need to consider that criteria for this project like we did with transit I mentioned earlier. So happy to receive that feedback.
Great, yeah, because I'm just always curious how the percentages are decided, because I would think universal design from an accessibility perspective should be kind of a big percentage of what happens, especially if we're adapting transportation methods, not just like active transportation, but just generally how people move and groove through the streets. I think it's part of all of those pieces. So yeah, just interesting to see how it's weighted, and definitely something as you're kind of moving forward, putting it out there as a reflection point to consider, possibly looking at that weighting, because again, how people get through the city is pretty important, especially from an accessibility perspective, and perhaps in some senses maybe more than a 5% weighting of an overall score. And then I had a couple of questions. So might be outside of the scope, but in the draft of the turn that you showed onto Bloomfield, there was kind of the look at Almond Street intersection. And as part of this process, it looks like there's kind of possibly some work on the Almond Agricola intersection generally. And it looked like it was, so there's this kind of like angled proposed crosswalk situation. And so again, might be outside of the scope of this particular project, but I know that this came up in the town hall as well, about just the general problematic nature of any kind of angled crossing situation. So I'm just putting a flag out there if there's any way to consider in this project or part of this, any way to avoid this kind of a weird angled thing going on. I think generally from an accessibility perspective, that's flagged pretty high. So that just kind of caught my eye as it was shared. So I wanted to give that feedback. And then the last thing that I had, and again, I might have just missed this, the left turn, was it that the left turn was going to be amalgamated into one singular kind of left, right, center, or was it becoming no longer left turn from Agricola onto Almond?
Yeah, it would now become a prohibited movement, so you'd be no longer able to make the left turn.
Okay, so if someone was coming from, like, in a car coming from Agricola, and that would not include bikes. It would just be vehicular traffic. So bikes could still, okay. Yeah, so then someone would have to kind of go, if they wanted to get on Almond Street and they were on Agricola, they would then have to go kind of like up, around, and over kind of thing as well to try to get back over.
Yeah, and part of the evaluation we did is to try to look at like where would those people move to, like what were the alternatives. An easy one, if you're coming from within the neighborhood, you could make your left at Isleville onto Almond instead of coming out to Agricola first and then making the left. But there were like 7 different, combinations of different patterns through the neighborhood that we thought would be likely for people to choose instead. And so that was part of our evaluation that we did.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that area is very tight, especially to drive in, as someone who primarily drives as my mode of transportation to get through the city. And I know making the left, like I have done the left from, I guess it would be like Agricola onto Almond, and that's where we would lose the left, right?
That's right. And one of the things, we also can
trying to picture it.
that same left turn from Roby onto Almond is currently prohibited. So we wanted to be really careful with the evaluation of this movement, because there's a lot of lefts that are banned in downtown. We want to be careful we're not trapping anybody.
Yeah, so that was just my point of like, looking at that bigger scope of was that considered? Because I've definitely made that left turn before driving through the city. And it depends where you're going, because you could be going 5 million different places. And so the left might not make sense if you're going to one of those other millions of places. But I know I have made that turn, and it has been helpful. And so I was just like, from my perspective, trying to picture like if that's gone, okay, well, like if I'm coming down Agricola or from kind of like central Halifax through Agricola, can't turn on Roby, can't turn on Almond, and they're kind of going next. The next big intersection would be, I don't even know what it would be, but it's quite a ways down to not then have to, like, if you're turning into Almond, you'd have to, or Almond, you'd have to go anyway. So just wanted to put that out there, as long as it was considered in the big picture of all of the pieces of streets, to not lock people into also the vehicular traffic, because I think active transportation is super, super important. But if we gridlock the city, very not great, because that also will impact the transit routes along the way too. If other cars are trying to like avert their traffic to other places to avoid streets that are now non-one way, and then the confusion that results of that. And then also, I don't know that there's necessarily like a big maybe through fare per se, but I'm just thinking like folks that might be trying to get to the post office or trying to get to some of the other businesses that are in the area, which again, they're, nothing's ever guaranteed that it will still be there in the future. So you can't always plan for that, but just thinking of from an accessibility perspective of folks that maybe need to use vehicular traffic to get through the city, just adding that scope lens in there, and that's all I have. So thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. I am next on the list, and I'm actually really happy you ended with that point, Nick, because this is like my main concern. Mainly, like it's like that. I'm like trying to get my thoughts in order. There's a lot of apartment buildings that now exist, and like condo buildings and stuff in the little Almond Street section between Roby and Windsor. And so with no left turn from Roby onto Almond on that space. So there's like businesses, but there's also so many people who live there now who can't turn left there. And so, like I live there, which is why I'm so aware of it. I've sort of been like pushed down now to have to go through Agricola to make a left. The next big intersection is Gottingen. That's a road, like that spot on Gottingen, like has a bus like route. So I'm just imagining like everything being so backed up on Gottingen with all of, and like people trying to like pass on one side when people are lined up and then blocking Bilby, I think it is, or maybe it's Macarus Street or something. I'm just sort of picturing already the lack of a left turn onto like from Roby onto Almond that way has made traffic back up quite significantly at that turning point on Agricola, like to Almond, when it comes to driving. So by getting rid of another one, we're just gonna like push more traffic probably to Gottingen, where there is a lot of spaces that like people are already trying to turn in front of each other and pass on like a side you're not supposed to pass on. And I can just see all the issues that are going to come along with that. But there's a gas station there, so people turn and then stop really quickly. And so when we're all trying to like turn at the same time and then like someone stops to turn right into the gas station, it just creates this horrible mess at an intersection. I'm also aware that those lanes are so narrow. It's like wild how narrow they are. And I got a pretty small car, so it's okay. But I just fear that like gridlocking piece that Nick was talking about. That's kind of like a fear I have that I've been thinking about since that part of the presentation. Like, what other notes did I have? And I guess the other option is to have just like a left and straight and right lane, although I don't know how likely that is. Or if that's considered in this larger like scope.
Yeah, our space available within the public right-of-way that we have available is pretty limited. That's part of why we still have this project, and it wasn't addressed as part of the project that built the existing Almond bike lanes, is because it's so narrow in this area and so tight. So that kind of interim measure of the sharrows that are there today was put in as part of that project, and then they said, okay, now come back again and look at it and try to figure out a way to make facilities that feel more comfortable to a broader segment of the population.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I guess, getting rid of that left turn, but it pushes a lot of left turn traffic to Gottingen. I don't think a lot of people who are like not super familiar with the neighborhood are going to go through all the one-way streets and try to get into Isleville, because there's a lot of one-ways there too now. So I think it just like loses people, and the most like straightforward option is Gottingen, where there's already a lot of traffic. and then a stop sign like not very far away. So everything kind of gets like stopped and pushed. And then there's static code. And I don't know, like I'm not aware enough of how that impacts all of it because it's like a parking lot essentially. But oh yeah. See Mark's hand up.
We did traffic counts as well as part of the traffic evaluation to try to understand the number of cars that are moving around. It's interesting you mentioned Stadacona. They have their shifts timed so that they arrive to work a little bit before everybody else and they leave a little bit before everybody else so that they don't overlap. But for this particular left turn, there was about 50 cars making that left turn each morning during the rush hour, and about 90 each afternoon during the rush hour. So 1 to 1.5 cars per minute. So not a huge demand in kind of the grand scheme of things, but definitely an important demand we need to think about.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and without it, there'll probably be more demand elsewhere. But I'm sure that all goes into the planning. But yeah, Mark, I see your hand up. I'm interested to see what you have to say.
Well, I was just going to, in response to your question about, I think I understood your question about an alternative to removing, like prohibiting the left turn would be combining the through and the right and the left turning movement into one lane. And Garrett, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is an option that we can consider. In fact, we have some feedback from our colleagues in traffic that suggested that might be the preferred alternative. What are your thoughts on that, Garrett? I don't think we've had a chance to talk about that yet.
We did think about it. We didn't evaluate it yet because we kind of anticipated that adding those left turns into the queue with all the rest of the cars would kind of cause things to be trouble. But as you said, traffic internally did bring it up with staff. So we'll probably take another little peek at it just to make sure that our kind of assumptions about what would happen are not incorrect, and we know whether or not that's the case.
Yeah, and I do imagine it would also like back things up in just a different way than things would get backed up if it was another option. So not to say that it's the right answer, but just that, yeah, I fear that left turn lane being gone, even though it is not the best left turn lane in the city, to say, so to speak. Yeah, it's a fear a little bit of like, oh no, how are we going to get home? Yeah, but I'm glad. I'm glad it's all being taken into consideration. All right, I'm gonna go back through the speakers list and see if anyone else has anything to add or any last questions. Yeah, we do have a couple more things on the agenda, so keep that in mind, everybody. But I'll start with Oliver Keith. I have nothing more to add, Rochelle. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks. Next on the list is Celine Vatour.
I'm good. Thanks, Nick, for bringing up the diagonal crosswalk, because that was the poignant complaint at the town hall meeting, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. Thanks, Celine. Trish Purdy.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Laura White.
I'm good, thanks.
Cool. Jean Saint-Amand.
I'm good.
Cool. Kathy Stevenson.
I'm good.
Cool. This is just, we're flying through. Anne Sinclair.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciated the comments about the evaluation thing and the percentage of how highly rated accessibility is, and how does that follow through on all the next phases to be as top of mind as possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Next up, Jamil Sino.
I'm good, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Nick.
I'm good.
Cool. And I am also good. So thank you all for being here. Thanks, Garrett. Just like a little, like, you're one of my favorite presenters when you come to talk about city stuff, because I feel like you answer questions really well in a way that feels like we've all been heard. So thanks for doing that. And I think you explain things really well. So I know you've come before, just a little like, good job. We appreciate having you.
Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Great. Thanks. Elizabeth, I see your hand up.
I saw Mark's hand was still up. He may have, I just didn't know if he had anything else to add, but He may have
I
actually
did.
left the meeting. Okay.
Well, I just had a thought that it might be helpful to go back to Garrett's slide on the evaluation, like the multi-criteria evaluation matrix, just to clarify that, you know, there is a weighted score for pedestrian safety and comfort, right, Garrett?
That's right.
Yeah. And then bicycle movement and safety. So the accessibility score is it's kind of like a subheading under pedestrian movement and safety, which has an overall weighting of 20%.
That's right. So the 5% Nick noted is very hyper focused on the features specifically addressing accessibility rather than just the kind of the general pedestrian environment, which contributes to accessibility, but it's not kind of hyper focused. So that is an important consideration, that the overall weight that we're putting on pedestrians in this draft, at least, is the 20%, and of that, a quarter of that is focused on accessibility elements.
So there are accessibility features that are now HRM standard and would be built as part of like any changes to the sidewalk or curb ramps, for example. So those features, I guess, are captured in that 10%, Garrett. Is that fair to say? Or
yeah, so when I do the evaluation, like Oliver asked about at the beginning, of those standard upgrades, they don't score a lot because we're going to do them anyway, right?
Right.
So in order to score more highly on that accessibility criteria, when I'm putting my lens on it, I want something better to be in place in order to score it more highly.
Okay, thanks. I thought it just might be helpful to take a look back at the overall table, because there were a couple of questions about that 5% weighting.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Next on the agenda is, thank you. Next is 9.1.2, a request for feedback on committee member experience. So I'll invite Kathy Collette, the Senior Policy Advisor, to deliver a verbal presentation.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me all right? Power came back on literally 1 minute before the meeting started, so I think it was meant to be. So mine isn't actually really a preamble, or isn't really a presentation. I have like a very brief preamble, but really, the most important part is the thoughts of committee members. So I'll give very brief context, and then would love to hear from everybody or anybody who's willing to share. So one of the projects that I'm working on right now with the clerk's office is phase 2 of a governance review that looks at how all the different committees of council interact with council, with the standing committees, and kind of function as standalone bodies. And part of what kind of brought this review about was, some committees feeling like they don't always function the best way they could, or that they're not being used in the, the most efficient and effective way. So in this phase, we're looking at the lived experience committees and just seeking feedback from each of those committees on, basically what is working, what is not working, what are, things that you would like to be doing as a committee that perhaps you can't do because of legislative restraints or bureaucratic restraints. Are there other mechanisms you see the committee being useful at, which is currently not happening or not allowed to happen, and things like that. So, really just seeking feedback from committee members on their experience in this committee, and what more they might like to see to kind of inform the the governance review report that will go to council. So if anyone has any kind of questions about the context, I'm happy to answer anything, or if someone has thoughts they want to share, I will be taking very, very detailed notes while I hear from you.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to go through the speakers list for this again. So up first on the list is Celine Vatour.
Hi, I thought I was second. I guess I'm getting caught off guard. Okay. So there's like so much I want to share that now it's like my brain is bottlenecked. I'm gonna do my best. The one thing that I did notice because we're gonna be talking about the work plan this evening after this. And so we were given an example of the 2023 work plan, and there was one thing that was highlighted as a goal of more involvement in the HRM planning budget process. I served as chair before Rochelle till we had like the election last June, and there was never any mention of us being invited to be involved in this kind of thing. So that's something I'd like to kind of, if somebody else can chime in and discuss that, that would be appreciated. The second thing as well is just like we were saying at the beginning of this meeting that we did have correspondence. Like again, as chair, I did not get any single correspondence from members of the public. I feel that that is kind of a fail. That was like my biggest hope. So at least Rochelle got it in her term. Congrats. But that's the thing. It's like I feel like as much as we're all committee members and we have counselors involved, which I feel like we're a pretty good team at this moment. I just feel like there's just not enough like an outlet portion within our meetings that could lend the voice of a member of the public. There's just not enough of that. I feel like there's just not enough members of the public being able to kind of interact with us as a committee. That would be something that I would have loved to have seen more of. The other thing as well is just on fact that I feel like this committee has a few limitations on bringing up some controversy because again, the correspondence we got was from a member of the public that was concerned about one bus stop that you're kind of, when you get out of that bus stop, if you even just anyone anyone who would have a wheelchair would not be able to go left or right at all. There's pebbles all around. There's a retaining wall all around. I wish I had pictures, but that's exactly my point. Sometimes I feel like we're a little muffled on what we're allowed to approach, especially with pictures, because I myself, with that very particular bus stop, I wanted to present that exactly a year ago when we had a transit meeting, but we kind of backed out of it because again, there's always this like feeling like we have to walk on eggshells a little bit with the business units, because we want them to work with us, we want them to come back, but I feel like we still kind of need to have a little bit more truth about what is really the experience with disability and need for accessibility within the HRM. So that would be something that I wanted to emphasize. Now I'm just like scanning through here. There's a lot of stuff that I'd like to bring up as well, like the same thing as well. Like I served as chair and I feel like there's a bit of inequity given with how much effort, how much work hours are involved with serving as chair on a monthly basis. And just even looking today, I've looked at, again, the 2023 work plan budget for the town hall, and the town hall budget was $10,000 for 2023. And I find it so captivating that in that budget, we will pay somebody to put tablecloths on tables, but we would never want to give any honorarium to advocates or chair members, etc. That's what I mean. Like I'm trying to figure out that I feel that even just reading on $10,000 budget, I feel like there needs to be a bit more transparency for members of the committee to know where those expenses are really going to be directed at for this very event. So that would be it. I know I have more, but maybe listening to everybody else, I might have something to share at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Celine. Next up is Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. No comments, I don't think at this time, but Kathy, is this coming to council as a staff recommended motion or report?
So this is phase 2 of a report that council's already received. So I wasn't working on that part, but you might remember it's when they looked at some of the committees that I think, like the Point Pleasant Advisory Committee. Do you remember that council report that looked at, you know, how those
Vaguely.
yeah, so whatever motion initiated that quite some time ago, this would be phase 2 of a council initiated governance review. So it's
Okay,
just
so
it's
we'll
been so
receive-
long since
We'll
phase 1 that
receive, your report then at council when this phase 2 is finished.
Yeah, absolutely. So these notes are to inform that report. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Trish. Next on the list is Councillor Laura White.
I'll just say what Celine was saying resonates with me. I just want people to feel empowered to bring their issues to this committee, whether they're on the committee or not. So if there's anything that we can improve in that way, I think that would be positive.
Thank you. Next up is Councillor Jean St-Thomas.
Thank you. Well, I'll build on that. I think it may ultimately come down to an awareness factor. You know, I don't know how much awareness the public has of this committee and its role, and maybe that's just something that we need to do a little bit of an educational push on, either from among the councillors that are members, supported by corporate communications, something along those lines, in order to ensure that the public has a vested interest and understanding with the role that we play, and to actively solicit their participation. I mean, we do it for the town hall, but other than that, how frequently do we reach out on accessibility matters? I mean, I just finished emailing Patricia Hughes at Transit to ask whether, because they've got an active survey right now on accessibility pertaining to transit. And so, just out of curiosity, I thought, well, I mean, I have to imagine that some of that information will wind up in due course coming back to this advisory committee, but I thought I'd email her and just confirm that that's the intention, because I don't want it to just go to council or just go to the Active Transportation Committee. It certainly should be coming to the Accessibility Advisory Committee as well. And maybe those are conduits through which we can ensure that the public better understands that we're open to their feedback, and we are another conduit to get this kind of information in front of the decision makers at HRM.
Thank you. Next on the list is Kathy Stevenson.
I just sort of agree with what Jean Armand just said. Maybe a visibility thing. I don't think a lot of people know the committee exists. Even if you did stumble upon it, it's kind of vague, as if do we have any authority to actually do anything, or what the purpose of writing us would actually be. And if we did the marketing and raised our profile publicly, or probably, without being really clear as to what we do, we're probably just going to be inviting an awful lot of complaints on things we have no control over, hundreds of complaints. I can just see it becoming a catch-all. Someone will find the address and say, I couldn't do this, that, or the other thing. So just my thoughts.
Thanks, Kathy. Next up is Anne St. Clair.
Yes, thank you. Yes, echoing what other people say as well. And this has an interest. These two items are on today's agenda. The work plan item, I have overlaps with your question, Kathy, and pondering about the work plan. So I am less than a year on the committee, so I still feel like I'm learning what we do, what we can do, what we're supposed to do, but people have been very helpful. One of my concerns is I don't want to duplicate what people are doing within all the HRM good groups that go on and that are going on and doing work, such as the accessibility. Sorry, Melissa, what the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and their accessibility strategy, and the accessibility strategy plan task force. I'm not getting the name quite right. So I know that there are those other things going on that are doing really good work, and how can we best mesh what we do with what they do and not overlap? And the other thing was echoing what other people have said, since I guess I started in March or April, and I don't think we've had any discussions about about the budgeting. So that was also going to be part of my work plan question, part of that discussion. I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. Next on the list is Jamil Sino.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I think I echo what a lot of people here said. Just the community doesn't really seem to know too much about us. I think also partially many times have we come across people who have presented different projects or information in front of us, and we listen, maybe we have a question or a comment or two. So similarly to something that was just like the presentation that was just that just happened, but almost everything like falls off. Doesn't seem to be like continuity happening with some of these conversations. So that's just something that I noticed. But yeah, besides that, I think everything like this, yeah, everything seems like it's well organized. So there is a lot of like contact with the clerk's office, and the correspondence usually come through fairly quickly. I think the emails are like easy to like go through. But yeah, those are just some of the things that I also just noticed with my time here.
Thank you. Next is Oliver Keith.
Great. Just in terms of like things that I felt or feel have gone well recently is I do think like we do have a mechanism for public accountability, which I think is really important as a committee. Kind of gathering what people have been saying, I think while not really governance related, there's space to have more. And by that, I'm like referring to town halls. I think those as a space are a great place to collect. And so like if I have to think about what's working and how to expand on it, the town halls are a great way to do it. Like obviously we as a committee don't have a purse. We can't, I don't know how we can I guess more feasibly get our name out there within the community in a way that I don't know, doesn't dilute itself. But I do find that the town hall was a really great way to collect that insight. Now kind of like on another similar note of, well, not necessarily governance related, something I have noticed that doesn't necessarily go well is there's almost like an asymmetry when it comes to the information we receive. Like oftentimes we'll get like a slide deck, and this isn't a critique of anyone, but rather, we're reviewing this preemptively, and then, the details that come through these presentations are almost unexpected. And within that, on that fly, we have to create sound advice and critiques on these plans that I find difficult, particularly when a majority of my questions come from, almost like what Nick was saying, like where is this coming from? Why? I almost wonder if, these kind of questions could come earlier. And I almost do wonder, like, if there would be, in regards to the public, a way to engage certain groups of the public within these conversations, who might have more expertise than myself, who's kind of running on the fly based on slide decks or limited information or data. Other than that, though, just my last note is I think like the leadership within our group is really great. I think like as a unit, we're very strong given all the circumstances. And I think it's very well run in its current state here. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Oliver. Next up is Nick.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, echo a lot of what's being said. I think there's a general lack of awareness with the work that we do as a committee, both in terms of like membership, but then also like what we do and what that impacts. And I think part of that too is maybe just the general structure of what we as a committee can do. And I get it's advisory in nature, but I know that has come up in a couple presentations where people have ended up in our agenda, have presented to us, and then we are very limited in what we can do. And so people don't really, didn't really find value in presenting to us because it was like we could make a recommendation to make a recommendation to someone who could make a recommendation to someone to like bring it to council. Or of course we have the councillors that are part of it that they can, you know, drive it as a councillor. And so I think as a committee member, that's extremely frustrating to kind of be in that place of like, okay, well, why are we here voicing concerns if it's really just like an internal checkbox for municipal departments to say, okay, well, like I consulted this advisory committee and they said like, okay, do these 3 things or whatever, and we're going to do it or not. And, you know, but we've consulted with them. So like, check that's done. Because that's sometimes what it feels like, to be honest. It's like the presentation today was great, you know, really great points about it, but like not a planner. I'm just a community member going through the city with considerations, and I have different experience and I have a different ability than other folks. And so like, yes, I can shed light on that, and yes, I have considerations, and yes, I have points of view, but also, you know, is that actually changing anything in that process? And so there's not a lot of, which was mentioned before, that feedback loop of like, this is how it's being kind of utilized, or this is what the purpose of our actual work is based on the presentations that we get, and, you know, what's expected of us. And yeah, Oliver, too, your comment about like, you know, what we get as a presentation and then what's presented to us is like, you know, kind of you just kind of like work on the fly a little bit with you know, the types of questions or the type of feedback like kind of looked at for kind of engagement with this. I will say, I think the heart of our work needs to be the community, and so we, of course, each as committee members are, you know, advocates of the broader community, but I think more opportunities to do things like the town hall, more engagement in those senses, I think is kind of part of our purpose, and maybe we lost a little bit of that in the work plan, and so maybe some of that will come more to fruition, depending. Yeah, and I do think it comes back to, you know, what actual impact the committee has and whether people value that, because if the business units don't value that, if council doesn't value that, if the community doesn't value the work we're doing, we're kind of just wheels rolling, not much happening, and we're all kind of for lack of a better term, wasting everybody's time just to sit and meet and talk as a group if, you know, nobody is caring about what we're doing. So I think that's part of this maybe wayfinding is, okay, how are we utilizing these voices? How are we really kind of honing in on that experience? And is it structured the way it should be structured in terms of the intent and purpose of the advisory committee, and yeah, and then like, I guess, intention setting for people that come present. But I also think that's also why most of our presentations end up being from internal communities, because that's how, like, from internal business units, I should say, it's because that's how we're being used as a, you know, checkbox consultation method for those departments to say they've engaged in accessibility conversations. You know, and however they use it is however they use it. Again, I'm not saying that there's ill intent there, but I think the lack of community engagement in the work that we do is telling for that as well. So why don't we get correspondence? Why don't we get presentations? Why don't people come to us? Why is it when people come to us and then hear how limited of a scope we have, get kind of frustrated, for lack of a better term, at us about that? And so I think there's a lot of pieces there that as a committee member, you know, it leaves you like, well, okay, well, why are we doing what we're doing? So I think there's pieces of that, pieces of getting new members, ensuring that process kind of goes smooth. And like, I mean, in an ideal world, we have people kind of lined up wanting to be involved and wanting to be engaged because it's valuable work and we're making an impact, and people want to be involved and share their voices and perspectives and see that change in council, committee, business units, whatever that might be. And I think part of that also too is thinking about, and I don't know if this applies to other committees, but there's a lot happening in kind of general first voice areas around kind of valuing time. And so the folks that often have these lived experiences come from wide scope of situations, and very fortunate to be privileged enough to be able to spend my time here on the committee and have supportive things in place to be able to do that. And not everybody has that ability, and so you also have to think of like the voices that can actually end up on things like a committee, and look at like accessibility of the accessibility committee as well, in terms of time commitments, and sometimes there's also financial commitments, and there's a lot happening in the space around actually monetary valuing lived experience, and kind of the free economy around someone's burden as a person with a lived experience to be the one to be that voice and just do it for free, and do it for just because like for the greater good. And again, very happy to be here. Not what I'm looking for. This is a great experience, but I'm just thinking like, again, I'm privileged to be able to do that and say that and to be engaged. And so I'm just echoing that as part of this process of, if that's ever a consideration, there's a lot of movement happening in that space. And I think that is a barrier for some people who may not consider serving, because it is very clear that, it is purely volunteer. There's no kind of involvement. And then, I think there were some comments earlier as well in relation to this a little bit as well. It's like, just wanting to make sure people feel valued in their experience, and that it's meaningful work and it's driving change, whatever that looks like. But otherwise, I think it's a well-oiled machine. I think the committee that we have has a lot of really amazing perspectives. I think there's a lot of really great passion, and I just don't want that passion to dry up because we're kind of stuck. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, and those are my few cents that I have.
Thanks, Nick. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do here, is get on our soapbox, like for this specific agenda item. I'm next on the list. I'm sort of like echoing what everyone else is saying. I think the piece around like lived experience, and the fact that like we can be here to talk about this because we're able to do this for free. And some of us are like barely scraping by doing that. But there's a lot of people who we are missing, and who we're going to miss later on down the road when people decide they can't do this for free anymore. Because the more disabled you become, likely not the more rich you become with that. So I just think that there is a big like privilege and power piece that's happening here, that like I'm super aware of, that like, a lot of us can be here, and there's a lot of people who can't be here. And the reason is because like we're doing a lot of work for free here. I agree with what everyone is saying about sort of community involvement, and how, I don't think the community really knows what we're up to unless we're having the town hall, and how to get people more engaged. And I have been really happy to see a little bit more correspondence over the last couple of months. And the other piece, and the piece that I sort of think about a lot, and I think some like journalism student interviewed me about this a few months ago, like after our town hall, so it's like fresh in my mind a little bit, is like the processes that exist right now for like how like changes are actually made, or how reports or recommendations go to different committees and council and things like that. And right now, like from our and this is my perspective and my understanding of the process, is like we talk and talk and talk, and we say, councillors, please take what we're saying to a council meeting, but we're not in the council meeting. So we actually have like no ability to influence that beyond what we're asking the councillors to do. And, like I really appreciate the councillors being here. Like Trisha's been on this committee for so long. And that is really great. But like I can't see what's being done beyond that. I mean, I'm sure I could like go to council meetings, but that's even like more work for us to do than for free, on top of the 2 hours or more that we're spending on things. And if you're doing the chair vice chair role, you're at extra meetings throughout the week. So there's just like a lot of onus on us, and yet like no actual power, it sort of feels like, in terms of making decisions and making changes. And I feel like maybe there needs to be more expectation of what business units, what city council, what like everyone is doing with our meetings, and sort of like, we spend all this time talking, and then where does it go? Like whose responsibility is it to come present the budget if we've said we want to talk about the budget? Is it our responsibility to be like, okay, every month we have to put it on the agenda and say like, please come talk to us about the budget? Or is it like someone from city council should essentially be like, oh, it's my turn to like talk about the budget with the AAC, or things like that, or just, any way that whose responsibility is to see movement in a sense, when like we're just volunteers. We're just here because we thought we could probably make a difference, and sometimes we're not sure. So yeah, I guess just thinking about how much power we have versus like the onus on us to like try to make a change happen is yeah, there's a lot of like elements of that I'm sort of thinking about. I see lots of hands up right now. So maybe instead of going back through the speakers list, I'll just go in order of the hands that I saw. So I'm going to go Councillor Laura White, and then Oliver, and then Celine, and then Anne. Cool.
Okay, thank you. My question was for Elizabeth, if you could clarify. My understanding is that we can make motions at this committee, even brought on by public members, that would later go to executive standing committee to proceed. Is that, have I got that right, or does it have to be councillors that make the motions even at this committee?
Yeah, good question. No, any member can make a motion. The only kind of, I guess, caveat or thing to keep in mind is that it would be a recommendation to the executive standing committee. So this committee they can make a motion recommending that the executive standing committee request a staff report on a certain topic or on a certain issue, but that, yeah. So yes, but anyone on this committee can make a motion. It doesn't specifically have to be a councillor. It can be any member on this committee can put forward a recommendation or a motion for recommendation to executive.
Yeah, it's just, I totally hear what members are talking about being volunteers. And sometimes councillors feel overwhelmed and not able to form motions either. So anyhow, it's just something to think about. If there's something strongly that this committee wants to go forward, we can talk about motions here, take them to ESC.
Thank you. All right, next, Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I don't know. I think what Rochelle and Nick were saying really like hit home for me. Like I know personally, like I wasn't able to reapply to the committee, which was frustrating because, it is something I've done, oh God, how long now? A long time. And yeah, like with work and having to explain in the meeting, it just never did no longer panning out. So yeah, I just want to, I guess if I had to on the notes highlight that and maybe add a third, because I know, like, as someone who's been on the committee, it's very frustrating. Yeah.
Thanks, Oliver. Go ahead, Celine.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the first one is in relation to what Kathy spoke of about the concern that, yes, for sure, if we get correspondence from the public, especially if we have a really good campaign to invite members to speak on issues that they find very important. And it's going to tie in with something else that I'm going to bring out about AI in a second. But I understand. I think even just to hold like a monthly survey, kind of like just to kind of round up what is the most popular topic, which kind of risks to kind of set some key important things for those that are minorities aside in the disability community. So I kind of, but yet having a survey that could help break things down, could even just, I also find too, like I find the town hall is kind of a missed opportunity to educate the public really on the differences between like the provincial government and like to really have like boots, again, the boots at the beginning, but boots that we didn't do, but really have it again, like really have more of a fair rather than having a panel of business units saying the same thing every year. Again, I want to kind of make us all remember that moment when you have a member of the public stating to somebody from, I think it was Public Works, of, we've known each other for years. I've told you this stuff for years. When is it gonna happen type stuff. I found that was so kind of awkward, sort of heartbreaking, right? Because this person that was really bringing this up really had, difficulty with accessibility within the HRM. And often we're seeing solutions that are kind of technically simple solutions kind of fall short of being turned into an action, like to really go ahead and do something. Anyway, sorry, I'm mumbling tai tongue. But as Anne's point on being afraid of not repeating on a topic as a new committee member, I felt the same way when I first started too. And I think too, it's sort of like an emphasis of being able to see what were past meetings without having to sit through all of the videos. That now with AI, when it comes to meetings and how it breaks down who said what was discussed, you know, like I find that this is a technology that I find is very advanced in that respect, because I've been using AI a lot. I know there's a lot of apprehensions with AI. The one I would say for committee meetings would be if you're representing yourself on a controversial topic and you don't want it, you know, because obviously we're not going to have thousands of people watch us, right? We don't have like a big public outreach, I would say, of views on YouTube. But if you're, let's say, going online, how is it going to be that we will, because I find like the breakdown for every meeting, it's still a very small description of what was covered. It's very small descriptions of what was shared. Like I find like with AI, it's organized in a way that it's not really humanly possible, right? Unless you have like X amount of hours to really break down what happened in that meeting is kind of what I mean. The other thing that I'm looking at, especially relating to disability and poverty. And, you know, like, again, we're saying that this type of advocacy is kind of a privileged advantage. There's only so many people that could actually dedicate their time. I really even say myself, I was a little lucky. I would have loved to have gone with the nomination for a second term as chair, but again, I had to quit because I had to prioritize paid work. The other thing too, it's like the town halls, like again, I'm kind of going back to the fact of really kind of absorbing the fact that a town hall budget plan for just a one night event could be $10,000. That's a lot of money. And I feel like that there is also a missed opportunity. And I feel that we expend a lot of money on the look. Let's make it look super professional, right? Like the tablecloths, I'm going to make jokes about those tablecloths all the time, that we paid an X amount of money. And I know what exhibition rentals costs look like because I've been a vendor at exhibition shows for crafts, etc. So I find that something that all of us could have easily volunteered to put a tablecloth onto the table and called it a day type stuff, like kind of seeing at what is the needless expenses for that kind of event also too, because it feels like we were trying to have a polished live stream as well. Like I feel like we're putting too much concern on the aesthetic of the event and how it looks, like, because the city hall wants to look at a height of tenure, I guess, you know, showing up with your designer watch and handbag at the event. I'm just going to say this low key, because in my advocacy, what I've learned in the last couple of years, there's a lot of disabled individuals that are kind of being told to shut up by more affluent disabled people because they don't like the topics that are being brought up about poverty, living on the brink of homelessness or homelessness. There was one member of the public who told me he was contacted to never talk about how disabled people are isolated people because it made another person who is a lot more of a higher stature not want, they want to hold their status in a classist society, let's just say. But then at the same time, sorry if I'm mumbling too much, I'm like overtired past this point, so forgive me if it's starting to go a little all over the place. I just want that consideration that members of the public, a lot of disabled people are in fact recipients of like income assistance, etc. Like these are not entirely rich people. This is why they're on foot. This is why they don't, you know, like we're not putting enough respect to that is how I mean with how we're kind of trying to present ourselves as a committee to the public. It's anyway, sorry, I hope that point made sense because I think I kind of lost track on how to explain it. I'm probably gonna remember after this meeting how I should have said it better, but I digress.
Cool. Thanks, Celine. Anne, you are next on the list, but just before you start speaking, I want to check in with Elizabeth because it is 6 p.m. And I guess I also want to check in with Melissa because I think something we really have to do today is decide the date for the next town hall. Which is hilarious that it's coming up so fast, but that is how event planning goes. So I just want to check in. I mean, I'm technically checking in with Elizabeth and Melissa, but also everybody else. Like, is it okay if we maybe go like 10 minutes over 6 to get this last piece on? And then we'll probably have to move the work plan to next month's meeting, I'm assuming, because I think that's going to be a larger conversation. Thank you, Trish, for that thumbs up. And Anne.
In terms of needing to know the date for the next town hall, that was the main thing we were kind of looking for. I'll defer that to Melissa. It was more that we kind of, for our staff working group, kind of wanted to, we have staff from Culture and Events who are going to be helping us this year. We kind of just wanted to have that date established moving forward, but it may end up being fine to kind of push that to the February meeting. I just kind of wanted to see, Melissa, what your thoughts are on that. And that being said, we can also, the committee can also pass a motion just quickly to kind of extend the meeting past 6 p.m. if that's something that members have time or if enough people can stay past 6 p.m.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Nice to see everyone tonight. I think to respect people's time, I think we should defer this item until the next meeting. But maybe put it at the top of the agenda so we do get time to if the community is okay with it.
Cool. Thanks, Melissa. Okay. Just getting my bearings here. Oliver, you have your hand up. What?
Yeah, just noting, I only have 8 more minutes. I think we would still have quorum, but that's just my only comment.
Cool. Okay. So I guess what I'm gonna do is let Anne finish your thought about this piece, and then Kathy, is there a way that we can like submit information to you outside of this process if we think of things later, if we have more to say or things we didn't want to say in sort of like a room full of people that's being recorded and then put on YouTube later?
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you suggested that. That's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe Elizabeth can share my email directly. And then my last question for, if you are going to write in, was specifically around like the formality of the meetings, because we use Administrative Order 1 for all of the meetings. So any thoughts you have are welcome. And also, if you have feedback on whether or not, the formality is helpful, not helpful, any thoughts around that, I would welcome those thoughts too. So please, share anything you want, and I will incorporate that in this What We Heard report.
Cool. Thank you.
I can hear Anne's thoughts, and then I can be done.
Cool. Okay. And then, Elizabeth, do you need to say something before Anne speaks, or is this?
I was just going to say we could just pass a quick motion to defer, or not to defer, but so 2 things. 1, just a quick motion to extend the time of the meeting past 6 p.m. And 2, the committee you can either pass a motion or just agree to defer both item 9.1.3, the town hall planning, and 9.1.4, the work plan discussion, to the next meeting or a future meeting.
Okay, cool. So I guess I'll ask for someone to move. Thank you, Trish.
Past 6.
Okay,
and
cool.
I'm in agreement in deferring those 2 items.
Okay. Cool. All right. Moved for both. Thank you. Okay. And I
Do you have a seconder for the motion to go past 6?
Councillor
Seconder for both.
Perfect.
Great. All right. I guess I should call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Cool. And all those against say nay or raise your hand. Seeing none, motion carried. Okay, now back to you, Anne.
Thank you. Rochelle, I really appreciate your chairpersonship in this situation. So thank you for herding us. And I'll be quick. It's just on the topic of volunteering without any compensation. And I strongly believe that that the committee, the HRM, should do everything we can to encourage as many people with lived experience as possible. And I have heard a lot out in the community about volunteer fatigue and being asked to do things for no compensation. And I just wanted to share that I was on the, excuse me, on the provincial counterpart, the Accessibility Advisory Board of the province. And right from the start, there was honoraria. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Good to see a precedent somewhere for something like that. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for asking us all these questions. And I assume Elizabeth will pass on your email in case anyone wants to have a more direct conversation of some sort.
Absolutely. And if it's a barrier to send it to me in writing, like I'm also happy to have like a conversation with someone. So just however it works, please reach out and I can either take notes while we talk or I can receive a written email. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Cool. So we're deferring the next agenda item. I mean, we're obviously going to have to defer the town hall. Sorry, not the town hall, the work plan. And I think the plan wasn't to like finish a work plan today anyways. It was just to sort of like get us thinking. And so I'm wondering if it's okay with people if I share like the introduction to working on the work plan that I had, and then you can think about that for the next month and we'll end the meeting there if that sounds okay to folks, to sort of like partially do this agenda item, but then leave off here at 6:10-ish, hopefully.
Will this be sent as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've written it all down so we can, I can send it out in an email, or I can get Elizabeth too. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so essentially the idea behind this work plan, and you've some of you may have seen the one that we had from 2023. We didn't make a new one because there was some things with like, I think it was with elections and stuff, and it ended up just being, I can't even remember why. But essentially the idea behind the work plan is that it is a living document that is meant to inform what the committee does throughout the year. And it helps us prioritize like the work that we're doing, the presentations that we're hearing from business units or like external folks. And like in theory, hopefully in the perfect world, is based on what community has said is important to them. And I think, in past, we've done the work plan sort of farther away from the town hall. I think now, because we just had the town hall and it's sort of like more fresh in our minds, we have a really good opportunity to really take what the community members have been talking about and saying is really important and make that part of the work plan. So what else did I write here? That was, yeah, like you've seen, and if you haven't seen, like maybe take a look at the past work plan, in this time we have with this month, now that we have some extra time to look at it. But yeah, we prioritized different things at different times. And then yeah, sometimes it's parking, sometimes it's infrastructure, transportation. The last couple of years, we've had that element of like the municipal budget planning on the work plan, and that just hasn't really happened. So yeah, really thinking about kind of what we want to be focused on for the next year or for the rest of your time on this committee. Yeah, with the idea being that like we can refer to it throughout and we can update it and we can make sort of like smaller goals, larger goals on it as we go. In the past, we've had 3 priorities, and one of those priorities had always been the town hall. And then we got a budget line for the town hall several years ago. And so now it's a 4th priority because it's always automatically in the work plan. Because of the budget line thing. I can't remember the exact logistics behind this because that is not my area of expertise, but I do know that the town hall will always be on the work plan. And then usually there's sort of like 3 basic priority areas. And then we sort of like find what we can do within them, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of the idea behind the work plan. Hopefully we can have a more sort of thoughtful conversation about it at the next meeting. But for the next month, maybe think about things you'd like to see on it, or things that you'd like to continue seeing. If there's something on the past work plan that looked good to you, or if you'd just like more movement on things on the work plan, like I think that's also a fair request. Yeah, and I think that's also, I've only been on sort of like the vice chair area since we haven't had a new work plan. So it's always kind of been like someone else's work plan. And I think, and like Celine, you also ended up like sort of grandfathered into a work plan that already existed. But I really feel like with what we've got going on right now, that through the agenda review pieces and through now we're maybe getting correspondence a little bit more, we can actually like really stick to the work plan and sort of how we're creating these meetings and what we're going to put on them based on kind of what people are looking for. So keep all that in mind. Yeah, Celine, go ahead.
Oh, and I just, because we never talk about the standing committee, but I was able to present at the standing committee last May. I made a presentation and I'm proud of it. And I condensed a lot of things that were from the 2023 work plan as well. But I'd like to kind of emphasize it would be great that as a group, as a committee, that it would be almost just as important as the town hall, like to really formulate a good presentation in front of the standing committee on that work plan.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I am aware of the standing committee and I think I'm like loosely on the schedule for April. But it would be great to have more cool. But yeah, it would be awesome to have more committee involvement. So I'm going to write that down for myself because I think
because
if that's
next month,
that'd be great.
Next month as an item, I'd love that.
Yeah, cool. Just trying to write a note quickly. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments? We'll send out some sort of typed out, like, here's what you can think about for the next month until we get into the actual like talking about this. But any other thoughts before we, or if someone would like to move to adjourn, that is also on an option.
So moved.
All right, thanks, Trish. And we just need a mover. So meeting officially adjourned, right? Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for a great meeting. It was long, and I think everyone had a lot of really useful stuff to say. So have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Cool. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.